Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I will be short because we're short on time tonight, but I just wanted to introduce James Cook, who's one of the co-moderators. Bob Jacobs and I called upon James to put on this program, and he's gone above and beyond. Just let me say, I met James after the killing of George Floyd in my capacity with the Alameda County Bar Association at the time. And I, of course, thought I was really with it. I had a Black college roommate from Watts who I played football with. And I came to learn that I knew nothing. And through James and many of his cohorts and all sorts of other things, I am slowly learning all that I didn't know. And I just like to thank the entire panel for really giving of themselves to all of us. So I'm going to turn it over to James, and he will do the rest with his panelists. Thanks, James.
Thank you. All right, so my name is James Cook. I'm one of the co-moderators, but really I'm going to be turning it over to Judge Madden. Just want to share my screen real quick here. So this program, actually, let me just stop the share just a moment. Let me set this up for you. So this program that we're about to do, I'm just going to share this with you. It's called Black Stories. And the idea is you know, we're going to ask some general questions about just general basic questions ripped from the headlines, that type of thing. And we're going to give people an opportunity to answer just based on, you know, their own personal anecdotes, their own, however they want to answer it. So you'll notice that we have Judge Jennifer Madden, RJ Martin, Ayana Curry, Terrance Evans, Jonathan Madison, Stanley Goff, John Burris, my boss, my supervisor, me, and then Michael Huff. All right. So they're going to be introducing themselves, but again, here is the basic format. The panelists will introduce themselves at sort of the beginning. They'll have roughly 2.5 to 3 minutes to answer the questions. We'll sound an alarm at 15 seconds. You know, also this is a biased MCLE program, and you know, this program explores bias in terms of providing insight for people who don't share the same experiences and perspectives of accomplished Black professionals. Okay, and panelists are encouraged to reframe the questions however they want to do so. All right. So starting with the first question, it's number one. Please introduce yourself and your current title. Describe your background and the story which led you to where you are in your profession today. Describe your experience with the system in terms of career advancement, whether it be criminal justice, political, financial, or the overall prison, military, corporate, industrial complex. I will turn it over to Judge Madden for the question number one.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So I'm glad that everyone came to this program. We have a really talented array of speakers. And so we have about 8 questions to move through. Hopefully we can get through everything and then leave time for questions. So as far as the first question, I'm just going to briefly introduce myself. I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking. I'm going to leave it up to the panelists, but I am a judge in Alameda County. I just passed my 5-year anniversary, January 4th of this year. And unlike most judges, I was not initially appointed. I ran a campaign in 2016. I came to be a judge because when I was a teenager, maybe 14 or 15, even though I didn't have any lawyers or judges in my family, I was very committed to specifically being a prosecutor because I wanted to help victims of crime, and then I wanted to be a judge. And I can't really tell you how, kind of why I wanted to do that, but I guess I had ideas about what I thought justice was, and I just wanted to be an advocate. So after law school, I went to the district attorney's office in Alameda County. Prior to me becoming a judge, the last assignment I had was as the head of the human trafficking unit at the DA's office. As many of you know, that is an ongoing issue in this county and throughout the state and the country, actually. And then I decided in 2016, when I found out that Judge Baranco, who was then one of the longest lasting judges in Alameda County and also an African-American judge. When I found out that he wasn't going to pull his paperwork, I decided to run. So as I stated, I've been on the bench about 5 years. It's been great. I've done everything from family law to now being back in criminal law. My experience as African-American female judge overall is great, although I have to say that there are some times I have walked through the courthouse and people have mistaken me for, of course, something other than a judge or made comments, well, you don't look like a judge, which I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not. And then certainly I've experienced things in court, both from litigants and attorneys, where I often wonder, okay, if I wasn't who I was, would I be getting, would I be getting a different, kind of a different reaction? So sometimes there has been a certain quantum of disrespect, but as a judge, you have to be very, very patient, which I am. I've definitely improved my level of patience in the last 5 years. And you just have to take things in stride and you rarely take things personally. So overall, it's been a really great experience. Let me start with RJ. Do you want to go ahead and answer question number 1 and give us your thoughts on that?
Thank you. So I've had them all here. So question number 1, just give a background on who we are. For me, RJ Martin, originally from Vallejo, California. Spent a lot of time in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was that kid that thought I was going to change the world with my basketball skills, but quickly found out that, there's so much more to life than that. So I went off to college, great numbers person. So I got my accounting degree and my master's in accounting. I did it back to back, finished real quickly before I headed off into the work world. Worked for the IRS for a good while. Before the last decade, I've been a financial advisor with EdwardJones Investment. Love what I do. Very successful and built a great business over the last 10 years, but similar to the judge, a whole lot of I think it was just my time to understand how the world worked at that point. I didn't know that being Black and asking people for money was going to cause so much a stir in my career. I found out very quickly that it seems like the last place anybody wants to invest their money is with individuals of color. So I made it my goal to just go out there and try to change that narrative. We find out that a lot of individuals of color don't invest because they don't feel comfortable, and also those advisors of color don't seem to get the same clientele as their counterparts because we're deemed kind of, not on the same level. So, I've had a lot of ups and downs in my career trying to be an advisor, dealing with the most important asset in the world, which is the dollar.
30 seconds.
Right? Dealing with that most important asset, just a lot of ups and downs, but definitely have found out that the playing field can be equal if everybody just kind of opens their mind about things. It's not that I'm less capable of doing anything, but the color of my skin should not hinder, just the trajectory of my career. So a little background on myself. Thank you.
All right, absolutely, RJ. Ayana, what are your thoughts?
Hello, my name is Ayana Curry. Let's see, my background, I started with the law offices of John Burris and right out of law school. From there, went to the California Department of Justice in the Criminal Appeals, Writs and Trials section. I moved to Georgia when I got married and joined the Fulton County District Attorney's office, and in Georgia, and I joined their appellate team. All the DAs do their own appeals in Georgia, so I joined the appellate team there. Before moving back here, and I joined the law offices of John Burris again. I am now a partner at that office, and I guess formerly known as the law offices of John Burris. It's now Burris, Nissenbaum, Curry, and Lacey. But as the appellate attorney, and I do the heavy lifting, brief writing, and that's basically been my entire legal career, is talking in front of a panel of judges, or in the case when I was with the Fulton County DA's office, kind of, coming to the trial judges and being like, before you make that judgment, let me show you this law. And I've been struck by how difficult it's been for some of the judges to trust the law, hearing it from me. Even if I'm waiving a case in front of them, I have found a few times that a judge would rather jump off a cliff with somebody who looks like them than to skip hand in hand with me to safety.
15
and
seconds.
it has kind of, caused us to have to appeal, file appeals where we've had a significant amount of success, which is great because, we solidify it, we get it made into law. But in the back of my mind, I have wondered, I wish that judge would have trusted me in the first place. But it's been, so James, I know you pointed out my time. That's just one of
Thank you,
the,
Ayana. That was
the
awesome.
experiences of bias I've had.
Thank you, Ayana. How about you, Terrance?
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Judge Madden. My name is Terrance Evans. I'm a partner at Duane Morris, where I am the co-leader of our international banking and financial services practice and co-chair of our diversity and inclusion program. I wear a few other hats. I am the president of Charles Houston Bar Association, which is the oldest Black bar in California. I'm also on the board of the California Lawyers Association, which is the largest state bar association in the United States. I'm the co-chair and co-founder of the Racial Justice Committee, and I've held a number of positions with different bar associations. Diversity and inclusion and social justice is something I'm passionate about. Just over the last 3 years, I have spoken at more than 100 civil rights, diversity, and inclusion programs with bar associations, churches, law schools, high schools, you name it. I experience discrimination all the time. As Judge Madden was talking about, folks saying that she doesn't look like a judge, people tell me all the time that I don't look like a lawyer. When I tell them who I am, even if it's counsel on the other side of the case, I'm often questioned if I'm a real lawyer. And I hear that all the time. Are you a real lawyer? Did you pass the bar exam? Did you go to law school? And I'm sure that many of my white counterparts never get those kind of questions. So even after making partner at an international law firm and rising to co-leader, people still don't see me as a lawyer. Or when I meet people in person who apparently never looked me up on the internet, they're like, wow, you're Terrance Evans? I never imagined that you were Black, right? Or I've had clients who I've done work for years who apparently never looked me up on the internet. I said, wow, you didn't sound like a Black dude on the phone. I can't believe it. You're a lawyer and you're Black. It's amazing. So these are kinds of experiences that I've had. I've been stopped for driving while Black. I've had multiple cops pull guns on me. I've even been arrested at the courthouse simply going to argue a motion. This was at Sonoma County Superior Court, because the sheriff's deputies at the entrance of the courthouse didn't believe I was a real lawyer and accused me of impersonating a lawyer. Even though all the pleadings were in my name, I told them you can look me up on the internet.
30 seconds.
So I was detained for over an hour and missed my oral argument because they didn't believe I was a real lawyer. So these are issues that are important.
Thank you for sharing that, Terrance. Every time you tell that story about the courthouse, it's just really hard to believe that people are still experiencing things like this. John, do you want to introduce yourself, Burris? John, you're on mute.
Gotta unmute, Mr. Burris.
Yes.
It's fascinating to listening to all of you so far, in large measure because I've sort of been where you are. You know, I've been practicing a very long time. And when I started, I was told by Clinton White, who was my mentor at the time, make sure they respect you. And so as a consequence of that, I always demanded to be respected. And I fought many battles with judges, close to being held in contempt a few times, you know, but I was determined not to take anything from anybody. It's just the way I am. And so I forged my own way. And part of that is I was able to develop the kind of practice I wanted. Many of you probably don't know, but I was a prosecutor at some point in time in Chicago in the DA and the state's attorney's office there, although I was in a big firm, then a state's attorney's office, and then an Alameda County DA's office before I sort of got into my life's work. And by doing that, I've been involved in police litigation for a number of years. I have done employment work. I've been involved in some high profile cases there. And so for me, the bias issues in the work that I do, and the work that I do really fundamentally goes to how African Americans and people of color are treated. And so I've been involved at the forefront of looking at the questions of racial profiling, looking at how people are treated, and have had many cases, over 1,000 cases, looking at the racial questions of how people are treated throughout the system. And one of the things that I have seen is there's a lot of points along the way in the judicial system where racial bias finds its way. And so
30 seconds.
I've been involved in looking at those questions along the way and trying to hold people accountable for it. And so I've had lawyers who worked for me down through the years, James and Ayana and others that have worked for me. And part of that, the mission always is to try and articulate the interests of the African American communities to ensure that their rights are not imposed. But I have a very strong view about the racial component of the judicial system and the bias that exists along the way. Anybody tell you it doesn't exist, they're not telling you the truth, or they don't really understand what the issues are, because they do exist. That doesn't mean you can't fight them, but they do exist. And so we can talk further about that. I have some ideas about those things, but that's just some of my story. Okay.
All right, thank you, John. Adrieannette, do you want to introduce yourself and give us your thoughts on this topic?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrieannette Ciccone, and I've had the privilege and honor to be admitted to the bar. Being an attorney has been an interesting ride. As RJ Martin said earlier, whenever he provided his introduction, I started off wanting to change the world one case at a time. And so what has happened is that I agree with the work that Mr. John Burris does, and you are able to change the world and shape policy, but it happens in a very different way than one might think. And so the aspect of the law that I practice in is primarily consumer litigation. I do a lot of debt collection defense work. I also do a lot of business, real estate, and I'm slowly moving into the realm of doing some civil rights work. And so I'm excited about the possibilities that is going to bring for societal change. But I've been really blessed and honored to have been able to do a lot of work with the bars. I started my advocacy work at the bar level with Charles Houston Bar Association. I've been involved with Alameda County Bar Association since the day that I I passed the bar. And myself and Terrance co-founded the CLA Racial Justice Committee, and we co-chair that together. And so what we've been able to do is really educate our fellow colleagues and the public about the various types of discrimination that exist, and also that discrimination that happens at many different aspects of litigation, being an attorney and also being a person of
30
color.
seconds.
Oh, wow, that went fast. And who experiences bias. So personally, I've experienced bias for gender reasons. I remember I did my first mandatory settlement conference in San Francisco, and I was lost because it was my first time attending a place and to do this. And I was asked whether or not I was a legal secretary, and I said no, I'm counsel. So you get the race and you get the gender discrimination. And then in terms of the race discrimination I faced, I think, oh, is that it? Okay, well, we'll come back because I have more to say.
Yeah, we'll come back to you. Yeah, come back to you.
We'll come back. Thank you. Jonathan Madison?
Absolutely. First, just another thanks to James. I mean, James Cook, man, you're awesome just for putting on this panel and just leading the effort here. Last year's panel was great as well. Thank you to the Honorable Judge Madden as well, and every other panelist. Just briefly as I can hear the 30 seconds coming already. For background, I have, right now I have my own law firm. It's called the Madison firm. Leading up to this point, I worked for Congress, the House Financial Services Committee for a few years. I worked for Freeton Williams, and I have a prison ministry my family has led in San Francisco for some time. That's really broken down a lot of the barriers I've seen between race and some of the socioeconomic factors. But one of the main experiences that I've had that really just sort of opened my eyes to a lot of the racial issues we even see in our profession and other professions. Working on Capitol Hill, I'll never forget I had a mentor of mine that kind of led me into that role. And every look I would get was somewhat questionable. They would look at every other staff person a certain way that came in with my class, and I'd be dressed the part, but I'd always kind of get these looks just to make sure I was on the same page, make sure I could speak the same language. And it wasn't until they heard me speak, and they could say, "Oh, I think he kind of gets it. He can speak the language, and he can." But I was always finding myself in this position of trying to measure up, so to speak, or trying to be within that line of professionalism, that space that makes others feel more comfortable with people of color, if you know what I mean.
30
And
seconds.
so, it's something that you don't really experience until you get into that position. You're right. And so, anyways, I'm happy to hear other stories, but I'm glad to be in a position now. It's one of the reasons I started my firm. I have an African-American apprentice and some other mentees of color that I can kind of give the position to be themselves and to be happy about who they are, where they're from, and everything that comes with being us. So anyways, that's it.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. How about you, Stanley?
You said Stanley?
Yes, I sure did.
Okay, thank you. My name is Stanley Goff. I'm a civil rights attorney. A little bit about my background. It's maybe a little bit different than everyone else on the panel. I started off not going to college and not aspiring to be an attorney. I was in the streets selling drugs for a long time. And upon me getting caught, I wound up serving about 8.5 years in prison. I got out or got released in 2001 and decided that I want to pursue law. Really based on my negative experiences dealing with the criminal justice system from the other side as a criminal defendant. It was a long road, but eventually I went and obtained an AA degree. From there, transferred to San Francisco State, where I got a BA degree, then a master's degree, and then I went to law school, got my law degree, and then eventually passed the bar. Ironically, I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney solely, and in my pursuit of that, I contacted John Burris, who graciously referred some civil rights cases to me, and I fell in love with it. And so I just started going after the police and for wrongful deaths and different types of police misconduct. And I've been doing civil rights work ever since. Some of my negative experiences as an attorney has been some of what some of these people have said on the panel. I've had bailiffs question where I was an attorney. Cost me when I was trying to approach the bench, even though the judge had just told me to approach the bench to talk to the judge. I had judges had to intervene and choose certain bailiffs out because even though I was telling them I was an attorney, they still didn't believe it. Even though I had a suit and tie on and I was in the court with my client. So I've had negative experiences like that, and hopefully things will get better, but they do definitely exist. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stanley. Amazing story. Amazing background. Michael? Last but not least, Michael. Oh, you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Thank you for that, Judge. I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to thank James for having me on the panel. I've done a number of other panels with James, and also thank you, Your Honor, for moderating for us. I'll try to be quick. I'm known to be long-winded. I had the great opportunity of working with John Burris when I initially began my career and sort of cut my teeth in that way. I started out as a police officer. I've been in the law over 20 years. I was a police officer and patrol supervisor in Houston, Harris County, Texas. I also started out as a woman. For 40 years of my life, I was presenting as a woman. I'm openly trans, man of color. And also my mother is Irish German and my father is African American. So I have a unique perspective and understanding just about being included with the Caucasian, inside the Caucasian circle, and seeing the different treatment that occurs when I'm with my white mother versus when I'm with my African American family. That really opened my eyes and brought me to a sense of wanting to bring justice. I now have my own law firm. It's a virtual law firm. We service clients throughout the state of California. I supervise 10 individuals, 3 attorneys, and 7 support staff, and still receive referrals from John Burris's office and out fighting the good fight. I appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Excellent. So I'll put up the next question. And while I'm doing that, I want to also encourage Judge Madden and remind Judge Madden that she has at least 15 seconds to comment on each person if she so decides. So let me play the slideshow here while it's loading. So the next question, you've heard the concept of allyship, right? This is specifically a question to Black folks, but with everything happening in the United States that has happened, including George Floyd, Dante Wright, Black Lives Matter, you've probably been asked, how can someone be an ally? And in the wake of the George Floyd uprisings, it feels like the allies, honestly have gone silent. That's my personal opinion, that as the writer of the question, but they've gone silent as it pertains to Black advancement in law and enterprise. What I mean by that is, there's a lot of corporations saying we're going to do this and that, even the bar associations, the whatever associations. So I'd like to get people's opinion on that question, on that concept, and have the allies done enough? I'll turn it over to Judge Madden.
Okay. Before I select someone, when I read this question and as James was speaking, one of the things I always think about is allyship real or is it performative? And we're coming up on Black History Month, which is really a popular time for a lot of corporations to do things. Mind you, it is the shortest month of the year. But my question is always, well, what are people doing the other 11 months? Terrance, do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. And I agree that not only has there been, if you will, a pause on the support that we see from a lot of allies, there's been a tremendous backlash following George Floyd and all of the demonstrations. We now have 28 states that have passed some type of legislation that limits the ability to teach Black history in public schools, that limits the ability to have any diversity and inclusion training, or to really understand why we are in the position that we're in based on the history. And there is an acceleration of that. There's now efforts to empower people in Florida, for example, to sue educators who try to teach Black history or try to teach anything that makes people who happen to be white feel uncomfortable about who they are in their history. So I think we have gotten to a place where we really need to fight just to even have a voice and to educate people about who we are and why we're here. I think allyship is important. I think people who are in positions of power to change things need to be part of this effort. We can't do it by ourselves because we're not controlling the institutions that are oppressing people of color in this country. So I'm hopeful that programs like this will wake people up and help them realize that the work is not done. And not only is it not done, we have so much more to do as it relates to affirmative action, voting rights, and so many other things that are now on their way to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah. RJ, do you have any thoughts about this?
I do. I'll hopefully keep this one short and sweet. Being Black, we cannot turn off our color, right? We're Black no matter what happens, no matter what time of day it is, and it's noticeable. Being an ally, I feel like a lot of times there is a double dutch of I can jump in when I want to, and I can jump back out. And when it's convenient, I'm in, and when it's not convenient, I'm out. And we can see that. We can see that, right? So we need everybody, color aside, white, black, green. The world will not be functioning at its top capacity if everybody's not together. So we need everybody to play their role and play this part. But just the biggest piece is we just want to know that people are there for us, those who don't look like us, every second of the day, not just when it's convenient, because we can't turn off our blackness when it's not convenient for us. So just very basic. We know when it's real. We know when it's not. Just be a human and be a friend. That's really all it takes.
And part of being a good ally, at least in my estimation, is sometimes just listening. It's not about, if I talk about a situation, I went into a store, I was followed around, and people say, well, maybe it was because of this. No, I just want you to listen. And sometimes maybe I just need to vent. Maybe that's all that I need to do. John Burris, any thoughts on the subject matter? I know you do.
And with George Floyd, I was giving talks after that. Was George Floyd a moment or a movement? And that was critically important because we've had movements in the past. When you look back to the wars, the various wars, when soldiers came home, they had a lot of protests that took place. We had the Emmett Till and the movements. And then they had Rodney King, which I was involved in. There were these huge protests, but rarely did they turn into something substantial. And the question here is, what does that actually mean? I mean, I view it as, well, what has it changed the environment in any way? And certainly we've seen significant movements in areas. I'm involved in a group where the lawyers are all the same. So we're all part of a group of lawyers who are looking to fight this kind of issue. So those are allies for me, but they're not the ones in the community where we live, because so therefore effort has to be made to bring people along, to educate them. But I will tell you, there's a lot of good work that's taking place. I mean, all you got to look and see what has happened in the state legislature down the last 5 years. A lot of movement has taken place. So there's good political activity that's taken place in a lot of different places. Certainly in the urban areas, I think that's true. I don't see it the same outside of the urban areas. I mean, you go out to certain places, I don't see movement there. But I do think and firmly believe that protest issues are important, that people should rally around these issues. But then you have to transfer from protesting to action. And then when you get to action, who's with you there? It's easy to protest, but when it's time to make a difference in terms of putting together the plan for the action, do you have people that's willing to do that to help? But I believe that, that from a historical point of view, that we always have to keep searching, looking for allies. There's no defeats, it's just maybe setbacks, but we got to keep moving forward. And so I always look at it as the glass, half full as opposed to half empty. So I try to be positive in these areas. And so we need allies, and there are people out there who want to be allies, but everybody's not going to be.
20 seconds.
Everyone's not going to be an ally. So you can't worry about those. Those who want to be allies, you work with them and move the social agenda forward. And it can be done, and it's being done.
That's right. That's right. Ayana, what are your thoughts?
So especially in the wake of George Floyd, I have two sons, ages 13 and 11. And I got a bunch of calls and a bunch of text messages from people I went to law school with, and people I've known over the years, just kind of appalled at what they were seeing and reached out to me. And I was like, apologizing if they sounded out of touch, but just like, wow, I'm thinking about you and your sons and how it must feel for you to be raising Black men in this environment. And I was actually floored by that. Like, I'm a civil rights attorney. I've lived through Rodney King and Oscar Grant, and have Black Power movement parents. So it wasn't anything new for me, but the way people reached out to me made me feel like what John was saying, this could be a watershed moment. And I appreciated it. So I'm never going to be the one to, I think it's our job as Black folks, honestly, to go ahead and embrace people who, want to be allies, even if it's just in the moment. If they're open and in the moment, I'll go ahead and try to take the opportunity to say something while they're, while I might be able to have a piercing, or lasting impression on them. And to that end, I would say, in terms of the critical race theory, and we have to start by acknowledging that privilege in this country, that it's been based it's been based on unfairness, and not your achievement.
Exactly.
And if we can, that's the one thing, if that's the one kernel and one nugget I try to leave people. You think there's been an equal playing field, but because, oh look, Ayana's standing right here with me. It has not been. It has not been at all. So
I think I really like the last point you make. That's absolutely right. Michael, any questions? Any concerns, I mean?
I do.
any
I definitely have comments here. It touches a tender spot for me. I don't mince words, and I definitely hold a higher standard as far as my expectations of white people and the treatment of Black people, because I stand right in the middle of that. It's what seems to be a never-ending fight. I thought, as I learned about Loving v. Virginia, that we had made all of the progress that needed to happen, and that allowed me to walk in some form of semblance of safety. And it's just not true. And I don't mind showing my cards and kind of being an open book. It seems to help advance various topics and conversations. And there was a 2-year period. I'm not proud of it because I'd like to think that I can manage things a little bit better. But there was a 2-year period that my mother and I didn't speak to one another because she refused to accept the fact that white privilege exists. And I thought that I was coming to her to just explain what the difference of my experience was when I was in Oakland with a white girlfriend versus when I walked in Oakland in a store with my Black girlfriend. I didn't know until I found out that I had to put my bags behind the counter when I was with my Black girlfriend, but they wanted to find out how they could help me and how many items I needed to purchase when I was with my white girlfriend. And so it's treatment like that, and having it be so close to home. I have racist family members. I'm originally from Texas and literally the black sheep of the family. And so, I hold so-called white allies to a higher standard. I have a higher expectation of what I believe is deserved and what is owing to a fellow human being. And it's not okay to jump on a bandwagon. It's not okay to be an ally when it's popular and to come and rally behind a group of people that are consistently receiving disparate treatment and being treated generation after generation and set up for being stamped down into a lower socioeconomic system or status, that is. And so it's not enough for me that you have a Black Lives Matter sticker in your office. It's not enough for me that you're willing to have a transgender person of color or any other person of color as your associate or intern or whatever the case may be. You have to lead with your heart if you want to have my respect, and that's my position on it.
Absolutely, I love that. I love that. Stanley, what are your thoughts?
Regarding this, so I have some white allies, or quote unquote white allies, and some of them are very liberal and very conscientious and very good friends of mine. And their hearts were hurting when George Floyd died or was tortured and murdered just as much as mine was. However, unfortunately, too often the white allies, the ones who truly are conscious, do not have enough political power to really affect change. The white people who are in power, who even the ones who claim to be liberal, are not using their power to affect change enough, in my opinion. And maybe it's because they're benefiting from the system as it exists or what have you, but it's too much of that. So there are white allies out there, but unfortunately, a lot of them, the ones that I know, do not have any power or enough power to affect change. But that doesn't mean that we give up. We keep moving forward, and and hopefully things will eventually evolve in a better way. As long as we stay conscious, then eventually that consciousness can, or there's a hope that consciousness can continually spread to other people until change really is being affected.
Thank you. Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just think it's unfortunate that we tend to see most allies after a crisis happens in the African-American community, right? You'll never see a shortage of allies across America, in the wake of a crisis. And it's interesting, John Burris, you said you did a talk on whether it was a moment versus a movement. I tend to think of it as a movement within a moment, right? Because it certainly had the elements of a movement, but in many respects, it seems like it died down too fast to be a real movement with lasting change. So I think this happens regularly with America. We'll see this reaction to some great injustice, and then all of a sudden, when the next crisis happens, albeit not an African-American crisis, things just keep on moving along. The newspapers forget what happened. And all of a sudden, George Floyd tends to be a questionable circumstance, and people start raising these questions. And so I think it's unfortunate that we have people that I think somebody said, kind of jump on the bandwagon and whatnot. But it is better to have some allies rather than fewer. I think we just need to be conscious to remind our allies, especially the ones that are near and dear to us, what it really means and what the movements really mean to us as African American people. And I think a lot of that just takes being transparent. I think the Honorable Judge Madden said it best. It's often just listening to someone when they have a story to tell, right? There's no judgment that can be cast in that moment. It's, oh, well, they did it. No, just listen and, then the healing can begin. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Adrieannette, why don't you have the last word on this subject?
Allyship is really important for many different reasons. And like Michael, I'm also biracial. So I learned at a young age that I was treated very differently when I would be in the store with my mother versus going out and about with my dad or my dad's relatives. And I too have had to have some heart-to-heart conversations with my relatives who don't see that, or how race can still be a major factor and how racism can still possibly exist into the 21st century. So allyship is really important, but I think that the start of allyship really starts with education and educating others on the experience that we as Black people, Black attorneys, women, what have you, because I think that if people are unaware or out of touch with the experience that you have, it's hard for people to understand and see how these issues and these things can continue to happen. So again, education is important. And I think Ms. Curry and also Terrance mentioned critical race theory. It's mind-boggling to me that the idea of critical race theory is
30 seconds.
Oh, wow. So it's causing so much angst amongst our nation. But the thing is that we have to acknowledge that an issue exists, and we have to acknowledge that this country was founded on the backs of my ancestors based on race-based slavery. Race-based slavery that happened in the United States happened in a way that slavery in other countries and other time periods never happened before. And so the implications of race-based slavery continue.
All right, thank you.
I'll share the screen for the next question. So this question is about voting restrictions. We'll leave it up for a moment. So again, voting restrictions and gerrymandering are dominating the headlines, and numerous states, as Mr. Madison mentioned, have advanced restrictive voting laws. They've also gerrymandered voting districts in a way that's designed to dilute the Black franchise. In some cases, it feels like progressive politicians are passive on this issue. In terms of an MCLE bias discussion, can you offer insight on how Black professionals and other minority professionals think about this and similar issues as distinguished from their white counterparts? What does this mean for the midterm elections? I'm also going to hold it. I'm going to give you a little bit less time on this, about 90 seconds. I'll turn it over to Judge Madden.
And what I'm also going to do is I'm not going to go through everyone on all these questions because James, we only have about 10. We have 10 minutes left before we go to the questions, or more time.
We got a little bit more time.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
John,
kind of wrap it up around 6:10. So we have time to get through a few more sets.
Okay. Mr. Burris, do you want to take a stab at this issue? You need to unmute.
To me, this question is at the heart of the democracy, is the heart of our continued viable existence. One thing that people have always understood, particularly the white community from days of slavery into the formation of the country, that voting was the real power in the country. And so a lot of the activities that took place to suppress African Americans down through the years was about keeping them from voting. Because once you get to vote, you get to make some decisions. And more importantly for all of us, is the resources that are available. If you win, you have resources. And that goes to the very issues of healthcare, employment, school education for our kids. All of these are matters that if you have voting power, then you get to decide where the resources go. And so to me, this is an extraordinarily important issue for not only here, but certainly in the South, wherever they're trying to reduce voting, particularly where the population centers are. This goes to our future, the future generations, because you get to decide today how people are going to be affected 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So you can't think of anything more significant than what is taking place as it relates to restrictions on trying to keep African Americans from exercising their power, their right to vote.
All right, Ayana, do you want to chime in on this one?
In terms of the express language of the question, how do Black folks think about this as opposed to their white counterparts? This is where the ally, I would want to tap in on my allies again. And you just really try to get people to be honest and for real about what is happening. I've heard people, not understand, how these measures are suppressing the Black vote, and or how having citizens with armbands showing up to polling places, they're not law enforcement, but they can kind of intimidate the brown and Black voters standing in line. Why does it have to take, why are there hours long lines and polling places in certain neighborhoods and not in others? Like, that's where I will check out on my allies. If I can show you that, these differences and impacts
30 seconds
across communities, and you still don't see it, you still look at it like, oh, we only did all this, permissive stuff during COVID, but now we need to pull that back. Like, that is when I will check out on you. You have got to understand and recognize what's going on, particularly if I can show you chapter and verse.
Absolutely. Is there maybe one other person who's really dying to answer this question?
I am. Yeah, I would like to.
Okay.
In many ways, this is the most important question that we can talk about today. It's more important than anything else, and I wish we could have devoted even more time to it. Without voting rights, there is no democracy. Without representation, we have no ability to hold people accountable, to have any say on who gets appointed to the federal courts, the United States Supreme Court. We're in danger. And my concern for the midterms is that because of all the voting restrictions, in Black communities, they've lost more than 1,000 polling places. In some jurisdictions, it's estimated that the average wait time to vote in Black neighborhoods will be up to 8 hours, whereas with white neighborhoods in those same states, it'll be 30 minutes. I feel like we're in great danger of losing control of both houses and losing the presidency in 2024 because of all these restrictions. And we already see the rollback of all the civil rights, from voting rights to affirmative action to women's ability to control their own bodies. And my fear is that we're going to go back so far that we're going to lose all of the gains that we have accomplished since the 1960s. So I think that this should have been the top priority of this administration. And I feel like we need to fight like heck to show how important it is to our communities. We're in great danger. And I wish everybody would wake up and start fighting for this more than ever before.
So I'm going to take a point of judicial privilege and ask Terrance to expand on his question. What are some practical things that either those of us in the Black community or allies can do based upon what is happening?
So I think we really need to rally around those communities in other states. We're doing okay in California that are going to have major challenges to vote. So whether that is helping people get to polls, volunteering pro bono to litigate some of these restrictions, doing whatever we can to put our own, bodies and our own talents and our own resources into helping overcome this suppression. Otherwise, we're just never going to be able to regain everything that we've accomplished over the last 60 years.
And talk to our family members about voting.
Yes.
I won't. Black folks need to be as aware of this as everybody else, and vote and stick it out.
I think we have to also, real quickly, I think
Go ahead, John.
we have to educate our population in those states where the restrictions are taking place on how to get around the restriction, because it doesn't prevent you from voting, it just makes it more challenging. And so therefore you have to aid the people, one, educate them, but then you got to provide a way for them to overcome the particular restrictions. That has got to take place regardless of what happens in the courts. In certain states, these things have decided, so now we have to work through how to get people to vote. We cannot have excuses for it. We have to fight through it. And the last elections, I've always gone to other states and worked on and helping people get to the polls in other states. So I can remember the long lines for black,
20 seconds.
lines for the white. So it seems to me there are practical things that can be done. It requires some personal involvement and sacrifice, not just here in California. You got to figure out, go back to where you came from. That's what I've really done. People come from different places. And so you go back to those places, they need help because all these states are trying to restrict the access to the courts and to the voting booths. That has to be fought.
Absolutely.
Judge Madden, we could stay here if you want. We could stay here for a little bit if you want.
Okay.
And take
is
out.
There anyone else who's really, is there anyone else who's really dying to answer the question? I know RJ was shaking his head.
Yeah, my little piece. So I think you all are definitely way more equipped to answer this question than me, but sitting down with individuals, I have clients in about 30 different states. And I see this as not only a racial thing, but more of a geographical thing that California takes it more serious. My clients in California, I'll have some, whether they're white or black, they say, I spent all of last year, I called 8,000 people in Georgia. I called like that. They really do. I talk to my Georgia clients and they're like, hey, it'll work out. And I talk to my North Carolina clients and they're like, it'll work out. My Florida clients are like, it's either going to, work or it's not. I see differences across the country as far as how important this is for everybody. So that would be one piece, like Mr. Burris said, for sure. In those states where things are, a little bit more urgent, yeah, we have to make them feel that urgency, because I don't think a lot do. I sit down and have conversations every day, and just geographically, California gets a lot of it. And everywhere else, I can see it being a fight to just get those basic things across. So my little 2 cents.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, anyone else who'd like to answer the question before we move on? Okay, why don't we go ahead, James, for the next question.
Okay, so I'm going to combine the next two questions, folks. We had a question here about 1-6, basically. And the essence of the question is, what do you think about 1-6? And what if that had been all black folks that were storming the Capitol? And then the following question after that was about COVID and how it's had a disproportionate effect on black folks and the black community, and how it's played out. Disproportionately more black people have died, and also you know, there is a different point of view about, you know, that comes out in terms of vaccinations. Black folks don't want to get, you know, a lot of Black folks don't want to get vaccinated, but it's not for the same reason that the 1-6 people didn't want to get vaccinated. All right. It's not the anti-vax movement. It's not the QAnon movement. What are you, and I'll leave it to Judge Madden.
Sure. Adrieannette, why don't you take this one?
Sure. Well, we're talking about two different issues. I heard you talk about vaccination, and then I also heard you talk about
Yes.
1-6. So I'll try to answer both of those questions. So in terms of what happened 1-6 last year, I was sitting down working from home, and I literally could not believe what was happening. I was getting text messages like crazy from friends, relatives in DC. CNN was blowing up. All of the news outlets were blowing up. And all that I could imagine and think to say was, wow, if these were Black people, people would have been dead. And it's clear. I mean, we don't need to go through any empirical evidence to figure that out. If these were Black people that would have stormed the Capitol, it would have been a totally different situation. And I've actually been trying to work on a program regarding arrest from what happened 1/6/21 versus what happened during the summer in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. And so there's that piece. So that's clear. In terms of the vaccination and the anti-vaccination, it's really interesting because I put together a panel at the end of 2020 regarding the racial differences in who was getting and who was dying from COVID. And we focused on the Black and the Latinx community. And here we go again. Here we go. So anyway, in terms of your question, James, about why it is that there are Black people that don't want to get vaccinated, it goes back to not trusting authorities. It goes back to being held as chattel slavery, being property, not having control over one's body, and also more contemporarily goes to the Tuskegee Airmen and all of the experiments that were used, where Black people were used in this country. And if you look at Black people in other countries, okay, well, we'll stop. All right.
Okay, Michael, any thoughts?
I'll just speak briefly to the disparate treatment with respect to law enforcement. I have witnessed firsthand in my time during policing the difference between how a Black suspect or a white suspect is treated. I also received so many phone calls, not only from friends, but from law enforcement members of all races, and we all remarked, the folks in law enforcement all remarked that had that been African Americans seizing the Capitol, that there would have definitely been fatalities. I think it's unbelievable to see how slow the wheels of justice did turn in bringing those folks to justice, and I find it very difficult to understand how anyone objectively looking at the situation, how they could miss the blatantcy of it.
Right, and it's not only storming the
Judge
Capitol, but it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, not only storming the Capitol, but then going back to work the next day like everything is okay. But that's probably another panel. James, what were you saying?
I was just going to say, the reason why I combine those questions is because part of the thing with the 1/6 folks is that there was an underlying strain, like the same people that were involved in 1/6, like the QAnon
Right.
and the anti-vaxxers, you know, were the people that stormed the Capitol. So that's why the combination. So I'll give it back to Judge Madden.
Okay, Stanley, any thoughts about either question or both?
Yeah, so like everyone else said, if it was a large group of African Americans or solely a group of African Americans storming the Capitol, it'd have been heavy casualties. People would have been heavily criminalized. People would have been under the federal and state prison penitentiaries and getting exorbitant amounts of time. No question about it. There is definitely a disproportionate or disparate treatment as to how they deal with African Americans who are seen as being aggressive versus how they deal with their white counterparts who are being just as aggressive, if not more so. Regarding the vaccination issue, yes, you are correct that, well, in my take, African Americans who have not been vaccinated or who do not want to be vaccinated, there's a different reason why they don't, largely due to a serious lack of trust for the government. Throughout history, this government has been unkind to African Americans, has been evil, has been cruel, has lied. The Tuskegee experiment is one of many in which African Americans have been victimized by way of the medical system or the governmental system of this country at large. So that's the reason why a lot of African Americans are very distrustful and why, unfortunately, they have not
30 seconds.
been vaccinated.
Let me follow up a little bit on this, if you don't mind.
Sure.
In terms of African Americans, how the treatment would have been different. Just historically, just think about the Black Panthers, what happened to them when they wanted to take care of them. I don't know if you remember MOVE, which happened in Philadelphia, where they bombed this whole city and where all the African Americans were there. And then during my generation in school, we had Jackson State, where the students were protesting. They shot and killed students. And we had students in Orangeboro, South Carolina State, that were shot. All of circumstances where they didn't have to shoot the people. These people were protesting. So those are examples of how the police look at it differently. And we now know that, with Trump, the way he saw everything, then he wanted to call out the National Guard early, and then he had his white militia people that were also ready. So it would have been totally different if African Americans were there. And I think there's history to support that. As for, I'm actually more troubled by the African Americans who don't want to get vaxxed. That part is most troubling to me, because every kid in this United States has had to be vaccinated for reasons just to live, to go to school. Very few have not had all the vaccinations that are required to just live. And so now these people are adults who've had all these vaccinations before, are choosing not to, or they're afraid of what happened to Tuskegee or what happens, and not philosophically not being in control of your body. I get it.
30 seconds.
I have, my son won't do it. Even I don't argue with him anymore about it, because he has a strange conspiratorial notion about it. And so we do have those issues there, but it is strikingly and hurtful, because people are in fact dying, and African Americans are dying at a much higher rate than other folks. One, because they work in communities where they have to do the local level jobs with the contacts. But then secondly, a lot of them also are very afraid and scared because of the vaccination. I don't get, but I see it.
Okay, James, do you want to move on to question number 7 about the local court system?
Okay. Yeah. So let me bring that up. So the criminal justice system, academics and business, finance, and science are frequently, considered by Black people hostile territory, all right, for African American advancement. So what changes would you like to see in your arena? And there's a question mark there. Lawyers, for instance, what changes would you make in the local court system to forge an even playing field to make the forum less intimidating for Black and brown people? Same in finance, same in academics.
Before I turn to Jonathan, for me personally, I would like to see more of us. And Alameda County does a really good job of having a very diverse judiciary. When I started as a lawyer in 1997, I was very blessed to come into, a judiciary that had, quite a few African-American women and men. But I'm constantly encouraging people. In fact, I just sent a text to someone this morning, how's your application going? I harass people because if we do not apply, then we really can't complain about not being here. So I think that the last couple of governors have done an amazing job of having a very diverse judiciary, whether it comes to sexual orientation or gender or race, but there's still a lot of work to do. Most counties in California do not even have Black female judges. Let's think about all the small counties, especially the ones that are north of California and further east of Sacramento. So we have to get more of us in the pipeline. We have to be willing to mentor, and we have to be willing to read the applications and get people across the finish line. Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. We need more appointments. We need more elected officials that represent our interests. I mean, that's always been the key to power, a seat at the table, right? And however you get to that point, incorporating more diversity in terms of applications, and even, in terms of my firm here, I'm pushing my apprentices, I'm pushing the attorneys that work under me. I have a staff of about 10, and a good African-American base, and I'm saying, you guys got to go after it. It can't stop with us. And so I think even in our positions, each and every one of us here, I mean, we do have voices, and those voices extend in various different arenas. And we have an opportunity to encourage people that we come into contact with. Sometimes it could be giving an opportunity. I've heard a number of people on this call mention the opportunities they've been given by, I should be calling the Honorable John Burris. I mean, but just the impact of John Burris is very felt and is very known. I think all of us can have similar impacts in our communities.
3 seconds.
And in doing so, we'll kind of share that knowledge and wisdom, and people will continue to get the appointments and opportunities and elected officials, the kind of change that we need at the table.
Absolutely. Terrance, what are your thoughts?
Sure, I agree that we need more representation, but we also need people of color who are conscious and who feel empowered to actually make change. All skin folk, right? All skin folk are not kinfolk. So you have a number of people who happen to be Black or brown in positions of power, and they're not doing anything to help the community. There have even been studies of sentencing and disparities in sentencing for Black and brown people that have found that there have been many judges of color who are even more harsh than their white counterparts when it comes to sentencing people who look like them. So we need people who are conscious, who understand what their place is in the society, and who are willing to use their power and political capital to make change, not just focus on their own career advancement, but actually use their power to try to better their communities. And I was just going to make one point back to the prior
30
question.
seconds.
John and I were on the same wavelength regarding 1985 move. I actually wrote a paper on that when I was in college. So I encourage everybody, Google 1985 move, where the government dropped a bomb on a house full of civil rights leaders. It definitely would have happened again on 1/6. I have no doubt about it.
Can I on a little bit on this? You don't mind?
Yeah, of course, John. Go ahead. Yes, of course.
I think that what I see in terms of impacting the criminal justice system is more of, to me, I think the points are made about judges and judges with people with mindsets, but it's also filtering down to me, the critical issue here is who gets charged and why are they charged? And what are the disparity in charging? And obviously, I talked about racial profiling, that's a big deal with me, but getting people into the criminal justice system and keeping them out is very, very important. And so to me, these whole issues about profiling and people getting charged and put in the criminal justice system who should not be there is a very important step. And certainly I've done a lot of, and am doing a lot of work in this particular area now, but who gets charged? For many years, I've argued these points about the war on the drug war was about a war in the Black community and about full employment for white men. Because what you're doing is taking people out of the employment center and giving them criminal records. And once they get into the criminal record, then they can't get a meaningful job, they can't compete. And then they wind up going off to prison or whatever it is. So there's work to be done around the criminal justice system in early stages so that you can have less discretion that some judges might have or DAs may have, because there are real fights along the way. And so all I'm really telling you that you got to critically look at the criminal justice system from the police, stopping people in the community, how they treat people, racial profiling takes place, false charges, lies, all kinds of things take place, getting people into the system. It's not enough to get in and get out, because once you get in, you're going to have a criminal record, and there's collateral damage associated with that. So I think there are ways that we have to look at that system and see where it is that there's leverage can be made on it to prevent this from happening. We've thought a lot about the criminal justice system in terms of charging with cocaine and crack cocaine and the disparity that exists there. Many people have gone to jail for long periods of time who otherwise should not have done so. But these are fights I think we can do something about. Political support helps in this area. I'm sorry to take a long time, but I feel very strong about this, of course.
Absolutely. Okay, James, how are we doing on time? Do we need to stop here for questions?
Yeah, we're gonna need to. We can give everybody a minute, and then we need to save time for questions. So maybe we give everybody a quick minute, and I'll we'll just stop them after a minute, whoever's left, to answer that
All right,
question.
Stanley, you want to say anything quickly? on
So
this?
regarding how to affect or how to approach a lot of people of color, African Americans having an adverse mindset towards the criminal justice system, I think that it would be good to have attorneys who are for attorneys to be approachable, attorneys of color, African American attorneys, Hispanic attorneys, to go back and speak to, in particular, youth who are possibly in trouble with the criminal justice system, to let them know that they can be lawyers, they can be doctors, they can switch up what's going on with them, and it's not too late. That they don't have to just adopt some kind of criminal mindset just because that's what their friends are doing, or that's what people are doing in the neighborhoods, or that's what they're seeing on TV. If I had someone when I was young getting in trouble, African American, especially one who had been incarcerated before, and now they were an attorney, that would have been very impactful to me and would have changed my life a lot sooner. So I think that that's very important. Thank you.
10 seconds.
Thank you, Stanley. Adrieannette, your thoughts on this topic?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know where to even start. There's so much to say, but
Yeah,
let
60
me go.
seconds, girl.
Okay, let me go back to say, I realized that I probably sounded like someone that was against vaccination earlier, and I'm definitely for vaccination. So please get vaxxed, please get boosted, do all those things. So just to clarify that, but I was just answering James's question. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, the time is now. We're actually behind schedule. There's a lot of work that we need to do, and that we need to continue to do, and we need to create opportunities like Mr. Burris has created, like Judge Madden has created, and really we have to continue to mentor people, accept mentees, and also be open to mentorship. But more importantly, I think sponsorship is really, really even more critical to this. So not just having a conversation with someone, but actually putting someone's name in a room.
Absolutely. Michael, your thoughts?
Sure, just briefly, I'm a new member of the California Lawyers Association Diversity Outreach Committee, and also on the subcommittee for increasing African American male representation with the bar, as well as transgender representation. I think that Adriannette's comment really resonates with me in terms of sponsorship. I have an intern, a number of interns of color. I think it's really important that we open up opportunities, as Mr. Goff said, to let folks know what your background is and not hide that, and be really open and forthcoming, so that folks that are from unconventional backgrounds, that maybe got their GED and then have been janitors and sold bottled water and done a number of other things and been a police officer before becoming an attorney, can realize that they have opportunities too, and that's available for us. And so I think that that's another way to just have appropriate outreach.
All right, thank you. And RJ, what are your thoughts?
I'll try to make this quick. Two parts. First being, I'm coming from the financial sector. So I found out very quickly that the last person that somebody would want to give their hard-earned money to was somebody Black, right? So just having that opportunity to be able to just be who you are and work for anybody. I think the big piece for me is starting like what Terrance said. We need more Black people to work with Black people. Like that would be just one easy place, more Black people to work with Black people. I know a lot of times being on this financial side, I got that. There's this picture that was built in America on what an advisor looks like. And I have this little class and I ask everybody, what does a financial advisor look like? And the same things pop up. Suspenders, white, glasses, right? There's this picture in everybody's mind of what like wealth looks like. So it's just the tearing down of things like that, the tearing down of just all the things that have been built that aren't correct over time. And then just allowing another piece of Black people working with Black people, for sure. We can do it. Beautiful judges I see, beautiful lawyers here. It's enough of us, for sure.
All right, thank you, RJ. Ayana, what are your thoughts? don't think I got to you, right?
No, actually, when I read this question, I thought more about my opening comments, just in terms of being a lawyer and Black advancement within the legal profession. For sure, I would love to see, more diverse judiciary and more of us in positions of power. But I sure would love to see, the folks who are already judges make me feel like they think I should be there. I don't know. I really feel like lots of judges and that we're going up in front of. You really got to earn your stripes, and I wonder if my counterparts felt the same way. Felt just kind of really felt like it's they don't think you deserve to be here. So
20 seconds.
I know judges go through bias training, and I would love to see more improvement on that end, honestly.
I agree.
Judge
Jonathan,
Madden, we should probably take some questions.
Okay, Jonathan, you just
sorry.
want to do
Did you
like
get
a minute,
Jonathan?
and then I'll,
Oh,
yes.
I think I,
and then
I
we'll
think
get to
Were
the
you gonna
questions.
get Jonathan?
I think I answered the question earlier.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right. So in terms of the questions, did you want to do that, James, or did you want me to?
I mean, you could. I mean, if you could
Okay.
write questions in the chat, we got another 9 minutes. So I'll just call the time. Whoever answers it.
Okay, so there was one question that was put in the Q&A section, and it was, how do you explain affirmative action to non-believers? Anyone chomping at the bit who thinks that they have a good response to that question? Good question. Yes, Adrieannette?
Yeah, so the thing about affirmative action and equity is that everyone should be fully aware at this point that we did not all start with the same resources. We did unfortunately experience race-based slavery, and then also modern day slavery in the form of Jim Crow. And people are interested, they can read the book, The New Jim Crow, and also 1619 to explain the disparity and the difference in the starting point. So because we're not starting the same, affirmative action is something that I support because that helps level the playing field just a little bit.
All right, thank you, Adrieannette. I just want to move. Terrance, do you want to say something really quick?
I was just going to add very quickly, to understand this whole affirmative action thing, you can look at the Homestead Act, where hundreds of millions of acres of land were given to white people, mostly white Europeans, where the GI Bill was denied to 1.2 million Black servicemen who fought in World War II to protect this country. And white people were given loans to buy houses, loans to start businesses, all those types of things that were denied to African Americans. It's to try to right those wrongs that are very specific. And of course, Jim Crow segregation.
Real quick, which we could all teach
Yes.
in a nice critical race theory based education. Like if we could, if everybody knew about these differences, be educated about it, it wouldn't be such an affront. You wouldn't look at me, I'm taking your spot, if you understood how historically and categorically we've been denied spots.
Sure, I think this is another question that it's very practical. It's to Terrance specifically. Voting is a #1 priority. As an ally without a bucket of money and a 40-hour work week to devote to the cause, what can allies do specifically to help? Do you have maybe one or two very practical things?
Sure. So allies can speak to other white people who are not yet allies and convert them into allies. It's sometimes easier to hear a message from somebody who looks like you than somebody who doesn't. So Black people preaching about all the discrimination and things that we've gone through doesn't always resonate with white people. So we need white people who are allies to speak to other white people and help them understand the same enlightenment that you have experienced. And that's the best thing you can do.
Okay. There's another question. This person wants to know if there were any significant repercussions for the deputies who detained Terrance and others, not believing them to be attorneys and delaying and preventing them from getting their hearings. If you can answer that succinctly.
Absolutely not.
Stanley and
No-
Terrance?
Nothing happened. I spoke to the judge where I had missed the hearing. Interestingly, the judge had ruled in my favor based on the papers, even though I wasn't there to argue the motion. The judge said that she would talk to the deputy, but I don't believe anything happened. Nothing happened.
My experience was a little different. I was very fortunate the judge that was presiding in my case, she was very offended for me, and she was a white lady, and she jammed the bailiff up. She reported him to his supervisor. She was about to launch an investigation, and when she asked me, how far I want to pursue it, I told her it's okay. She made the guy apologize to me and everything. So that was a good experience from that end, from this white ally judge.
Okay. There's a question about how about Black judges inviting Black and other high schoolers of color into the courtroom when COVID restrictions permit, to observe Black judges and lawyers in action and to see what the practice can and should look like for them. When years ago, I had 2 summer interns, both of whom were African-American women, who I helped them on research, and they helped me for a couple of weeks. So I was very deliberate about that. And whenever I have requests, obviously pre-COVID, for high school students or anyone to come in and watch me, I of course allow that. And I have tons and tons and tons of informal mentees who I always give my card out, I give my email, I respond. I may not respond within 24 hours, but I will respond to reach out. There was another question, hopefully we have time for. Can one of you comment on how the numbers of diverse judges have declined over the past decade? I believe Terrance had the stats regarding California courts, and this person cited a specific site regarding the federal bench and diversity on the federal bench. I don't know if Terrance or anyone else feels comfortable addressing this. I actually feel that the numbers are pretty good, at least in Alameda County, but we tend to be very spoiled here. I'm not sure what the numbers look like in Contra Costa, so I can't pontificate on that. Terrance?
You know, I don't have the numbers. I know that Judge Brenda Harpin Forte, she certainly has the numbers for California. I would say on the federal level, during Trump's term, he didn't appoint any Black federal judges. So we're still trying to recover from that deficit.
You know what, I have to tell you though, I'm in the district court. I'm in the district court, federal district court, both in the Eastern and Northern District. That's where we practice at. There hasn't been a diminution in the number of Black judges there. Black judges have always been 1 or 2 or 3 in the Northern District, and 2 or 3 in Sacramento consistently. And there's always been 1 or 2 magistrates. We still have that. There weren't any appointments in the Trump administration in terms of the federal judiciary, but there are going to be more. As you know, they do retire. Judges do retire, so we are losing. We have lost a couple, but at the same time, others are coming along. So I don't feel certainly with the Obama's administration and before that, the Democratic administration, there's always been 1 or 2 federal judges been appointed. It hasn't been high, but it's always maybe 3 or 4 max. And certainly in Los Angeles equally as well. Not in San Diego, I don't think. I only know 1 federal judge in San Diego, but I don't see that as a real problem for the most part in terms of our population base. When you look at the Bay Area, we're not that large of a population base, even though Oakland might appear to be. But when you put the whole Northern District together, our percentage is actually pretty small. And I think we've been more highly represented in the federal courts than our population would suggest in the local districts.
Okay.
And Judge Madden, I'll just say one thing before you wrap it up. I'll turn it over to Judge Madden to wrap it up. But we're putting together another program called the Crown Act. How bias, microaggression, and other systematic reasons prevent Black women advancement in law, enterprise, academics, and science. So we're going to be doing this with Alameda County Bar, hopefully in conjunction with Contra Costa County Bar. We're going to, I'm going to be calling on Judge Madden. We also have Judge LaDoris Cordell sitting in the same chair as Judge Madden is right now. She just wrote a book. So Judge LaDoris Cordell and Adrieannette, we're asking her, Ayana, so you'll hear from this again. And we'll be doing this panel again for Alameda County Bar Association. So just letting everybody know. I'll turn it over to Judge Madden to say the final words, and that's it.
All right, it is 6:30 on the spot. So I
Thank you,
would
Judge
like to
Madden.
thank-
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank
no
you.
problem. No,
To
no
all the
problem. No
panelists,
problem.
thank all of you. That's so awesome.
Yeah, yes, I just wanted to just say that, you know, at the end of the day, being it was in court on the calendar all day. And it's so nice just to really end my evening with the panelists. And I want to thank the Contra Costa Bar Association and thank all the panelists who are and just an amazing, impressive, definitely group. I know a lot of the panelists, but some of you I've just met tonight. And for those of you who are listening, who are allies, I think you, or who are, want to be allies, I think you got a lot of information about that. Please let us know how we can help you and how we can further your education about our community to make sure that the playing field is level. And please take any information that you've learned tonight and just go out and talk to people, educate them. You don't have to be African-American to talk about African-American issues. You just have to care, you have to understand about the history, and you want to affect change. So thank you, everyone. Please continue to stay safe and go forth and prosper.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.